filtration area in the quarantine sections. If you want to come up a bit closer there, my voice is not going to last too long if I have to scream out too loud. So welcome along everybody, my name's Marnie Horton. I'm the curator of sharks and fishes here at Seaworld, which basically means I'm responsible for everything that is a shark or a fish. I also look after the marine turtle rehabilitation facility that we've had here for about 20 years. We see about between 40 and 60 turtles that are stranded or injured or sick that come into us for rehabilitation. We have between a 25% and a 50% success rate of rehabilitating these animals, tagging them and returning them to the wild where they came from. Most of the turtles that we do get are in a pretty poor state, pretty poor condition. They've been very sick for a very long time. So anything that we can do to return these animals to the wild is obviously crucial, because all 6 species of marine turtles in Australia at the moment are either threatened or endangered. So that's sort of part of my role. The bulk of my role obviously is tied up here at Shark Bay. So who here has a saltwater aquarium? Who's a salty? Who's a freshwater person? Who looks up just freshwater stuff? No, you're all for saltwater, that's fantastic. So you all understand the trials and tribulations of looking after a marine tank, the cost, the maintenance involved. Well, I've got 6 million litres here, so my problems and issues and water changes and cleaning and all that is magnified hugely in comparison to what you guys deal with at your home aquariums, or you might have businesses where you look after sort of aquariums in doctor's surgery or hotels and things like that. As I said, we've got 6 million litres of water here. This pool is the deepest pool. It's 4 metres here at the deep end and 1.8 metres at the opposite end. The reef pool down the other end is 3.5 metres. The water is all the one body of water. It's all filtered by the same filtration plant, but we obviously have windows and barriers in place, which you might be able to see just along here. There's actually a window there and a window up there which separate the main predatory sharks and obviously the coral reef species down the other end. Being a single body of water, obviously whatever happens in one tank as far as disease or illness can go right through the whole system. Thankfully, touch wood, we've never been in that situation where we've had a disease go through this system. We do have a massive filtration plant. Obviously, you may be a little surprised when you get out the back. See, we have 32 protein skimmers, which are they're like rocket launchers. We reckon if you could see it from outer space, you'd think that we were producing rockets or something here on the side. We have a turnover rate of about 850 litres a second through our filtration plant. Okay, so we have a huge amount of pumping equipment. We have 6 main sand filters, which you'll see when we get out the back. We use ozone for microflocculation in the protein skimmers, which helps to remove all those little particulate bits and pieces that will obscure your vision through 35 metres of water. We use UV. Some of you might use UV. We use high rate UV filters, and 25% of the whole water volume goes through those UV filters. 100% of the water volume goes through the protein skimmers. Okay, so we're putting 850 litres a second through all those protein skimmers, then through a massive biofilter. Okay, we'll show you that. Our biocubes aren't little things like this. Our biocubes are 1 metre blocks, 1 metre cubes, okay, and they're all stacked about 2 stories high, probably, you would say. So obviously all that is for a reason. We have an open air exhibit here. Now you all know if you have your aquarium next to a window, what happens to your tank? It goes green. We have the same problems here. Okay, so if we don't vacuum this gravel, we do it basically every day of the week. We don't clean the windows every day of the week. We have algae growing. Okay. The nice thing about a big system like this is that it does sort of settle down after about the first 2 seasons. So we went through a summer when we initially opened back in 2004, and we had big long filamentous green algae growing off every single surface. So we had divers in there scooping it out and vacuuming it up. It was a real drama for us when we started up. But within 12 months' time, things had settled down. You'll see there's some algae on the rockwork up in the corners there, so we still have some sort of shortish algae. These days the fish keep it intact for us, so the fish really feed on it and groom it and really keep it nice and short for us, which is fantastic. Basically, we vacuum this system the same as you guys would vacuum your tank with your little, your little siphon or your Coke bottle, whatever you might be using. But we just do it on a bigger scale. We have a vacuum head that stands about this high and it's about that round, and it runs back through some underwater lines back to the main vacuum pump. We have 3 vacuum points in this pool. We have 2 vacuum points in that pool over there. So we can run a vacuum in both sides at the same time. Okay. We have a huge team of divers, obviously, that looks after this exhibit. The windows in this exhibit, in this side only, take about an hour and a half, which to 2 hours just to get around to these windows, especially in summertime. In winter, obviously, things are a little bit different. There's not as much sunlight, the water's not as warm, and we don't have to worry about things quite so much. But in summer, it's an everyday, every little bit. Okay, so the guys get really good at the wax on, wax off thing. We have quite a large population of fish here. We have over 25,000 fish in this exhibit. We have, in the reef side, they're mainly tropical reef animals that have come from northern Queensland, from a collector in northern Queensland. So you guys probably buy most of your fish from local fish shops around here, I'm guessing. Would that be correct? You're paying a retail price because you're paying for the middleman. I buy direct from the collector and I ship it down out of cans myself. Okay, so you're paying obviously for freight and for the guy over here, whoever you're buying it from, to hold it and feed it and look after it. Okay? One thing that you should always do, I think, as a responsible aquarist, is to always try and find out where your fish have come from. I think that's really important. If they're getting fish from Indonesia that have been caught with cyanide fishing, you're going to get them home, they're going to eat like crazy for a few weeks, and then they're just going to die on you, and you've got no understanding of why it's happened. So always ask the source of the fish and how they're caught. You want hand-caught, net-caught fish. Okay, you don't want animals that are caught with cyanide or any other kind of anaesthetic where they puff anaesthetic into the bommy and then the fish will float out and they scoop them up. You want them to catch them with no anaesthetic, with nets, hand nets and things like that. Okay, so most of the people in Australia are doing it that way. Most of the catches. Overseas, I can't say the same thing about that, especially for places like Indonesia. There's a lot of not so good stuff going on over there, and ultimately it ends up costing you money. And I heard a figure that 95% of fish sold out of aquarium shops die. So that means that you're buying them, taking them home, and they're dying. Okay, so 95% of the fish that's caught on the reefs in the world is dying in the aquarium business. So it's not that good a record, I would say. As far as the animals that have come for here, we have some locally caught sharks. So these big sharks are just caught offshore here. Okay, we hooked up with a fisherman. He was catching the animals. He catches them for food and bait and all sorts of things. If he had a shark that was suitable for us, we would go down, he would pass the line across to us. We would bring it onto our boat. We've got a large boat with a big hoist on it. We've got animals here that are about 350 kilos, so we can lift them onto our boat into massive big tubs, have a flow-through water system, and then bring them through, back down through the seaway and into Seaworld here. We do have a fair amount of breeding that's happening with our elasmobranchs, our sharks and rays. You might see a huge, big, dusky shark in here. Her name is Harriet, and she's about to have some babies. We're not quite sure when. Let's have a look. But we also have some juveniles that were born here as well, and we've had a number of litters of pups from these dusky whales that we've tagged and released also. So we've actually returned more sharks to the wild than we've actually collected for this exhibit. For For our rays, if you have a look in the tank next door, you'll notice there's some baby eagle rays. We've got a whole ray exhibit called Ray Reef over out past the entrance of Shark Bay. Later on in the day, go and have a look up there. We've actually got about 5 species of ray that we breed here in the park. For those of you who've been coming to Seaworld for a very long time, you might recognise our old bull shark, Elle. She's been here for over 25 years. That's the big black girl in the middle there. She came from an aquarium in Port Macquarie over 25 years ago. So she's been in a captive situation most of her life. We also have some farmed fish in here. See this big school of dewies down the bottom here? They came from a farm in Yamba. So there's people all around the place who are farming fry and smallish fish. We've got some farmed yellowtail kingfish and some farmed jewfish. And the jewfish have done reasonably well in here. We started off with a group of about 200 and that's only one lot there, another lot down here. I estimate we've still probably got about 150 left. So that probably answers another question. We do have some predation in here. You can't have these massive big sharks that are technically they're wild, where they don't occasionally take the odd fish. Usually though, the fish is either being injured or it might have a couple of tumours growing on it or something. The sharks can really pick up on when a fish is not doing well. They won't just go and chase a perfectly healthy fish for no reason. Okay? This is one of the babies here. She's not such much a baby anymore. She's nearly 2 years old. This little boy, that's one of the little boys, and there's a little girl in there as well. There's also a bronze whaler, one bronze whaler, which is that animal swimming away from us there. Most of the other fish have been caught locally in this tank here. We've tried to keep the two areas kind of separate. So this is more of an open, sort of an open ocean pelagic kind of scene, and then this is more of a coral reef exhibit. So all the corals that you'll see in that tank are made out of resin. Okay, it's a concrete bommy with resin corals that have been attached. We've tried to grow corals, but obviously with the huge population of fish in there, the fish end up eating them before we can actually achieve too much in growing them. You might notice that there's poles hanging down on the windows. That's because we're trying to keep the sharks from rubbing against the window. When they come around the outside of the exhibit, they'll touch the window with their pectoral fins. And when we first opened, we didn't have the poles on there, and within about 2 weeks, we had all these stripe marks across the window because it is acrylic. Okay, it's relatively soft. So we had to put these poles up there just to stop them doing that swim pattern where they run along the window, because we would have been using underwater wet and dry sandpaper for, every day of our lives. So there's $1 million worth of acrylic in this exhibit. We can never replace it because we can never drain these pools. Firstly, we'd never have anywhere to put the animals, and secondly, we had to use quite an extensive dewatering system to get down as deep as we have because we're right on the Broadwater. So if we ever drain these pools, they're a concrete shell, they would simply pop up out of the ground. So we have to take as much care as we possibly can with these windows because they're obviously worth a lot of money and they're the main feature, I guess, of the exhibit. So does anyone have any questions about the exhibit while we're down here?
How thick is that?
The windows are 16 centimetres thick. Okay.
So the sharks take a while to settle down when you first put them in?
It does depend on the species. We've had tiger sharks in here, and they're quite timid animals. They're quite solitary animals. They like to be by themselves, so they can take a little while to settle down. We had one female tiger shark here for 3.5 years, Tassie, and she went from 47 kilos when we caught her, she was only little, to 188 kilos in 3.5 years. So we had to release her because she was just getting so big. And they really don't like being around the other big sharks. These guys are quite happy to socialise, I guess, and be around each other, but the tiger sharks always wanted to be kind of away from everybody else. So. But generally, these dusky sharks have been a fantastic exhibit animal for us. No one else in the world keeps dusky sharks at the size that we do. People around the world keep juveniles and smaller animals, but obviously the they're massive animals when they get big, and they'll get bigger than that as well. I've seen an animal that's dusky whale is 5 metres, so they will get much bigger than this. And there's very few places in the world that actually have a 60-metre long swimming pattern where they can actually swim, glide to rest, and then turn at the other end and swim and glide, which is quite important for their resting. You'll see the divers on the other side there, just about to start some vacuuming. We do wear a chainmail dress in here. We used to wear, when we first started up for OH&S reasons, we used to wear a full chainmail suit, which was arms, like a vest, pants. We used to wear a helmet. And over the years we've been able to downgrade that just based on history. Obviously we have divers in here every single day, and we've never had an incident where anybody has been bitten by any one of these animals. And we don't expect that it will ever happen. We have a rigid training program for the divers. They go in with an additional person for a period of time, so there's actually 3 of them. We carry a pole. You'll see the guy on the left-hand side has actually got a pole in his hand. That's only to be used in emergencies, obviously. If they feel that there is any threat to themselves or to their buddy, then they can use the pole to move the animal away from them.
I don't think the lion trainer either. The tiger trainer thought he was never going to get bitten either, did he?
But that's a mammal. That's a mammal. They're different. They think completely differently to fish. Fish are relatively predictable, even though you're probably going, yeah, whatever you reckon. But after working with them for 16 years, they are relatively predictable. You pretty much know what they're going to do day in, day out. We have a system where we've said to all of the divers, if at any time you feel in any way that things aren't right in there, you get out of the pool. There's no repercussions for them. They don't lose pay, they don't get sent home or anything like that. They get out of the pool, they notify me, we have a look at the animals, see what's going on. Because we have had mating going on in this pool, so you imagine 2 of those large sharks chasing each other at relatively high speed. Obviously when they mate, they grab on with their teeth. It's the only way of hanging on. So they end up rolling around in the water column. So if anything like that happens, we know the precursors, the guys just get out of the water. Generally things are only short-lived. That sort of behaviour is very short-lived. They might have a fish that's not doing so well, and all of a sudden the sharks will be onto it. It's like your dog pricking up his ears and something's going on. It's the same kind of thing with the sharks. The guys get out of the water. We've also noticed when we have large storms coming over, when the low pressure systems come through, the sharks start to pick up their speed and start to swim a little bit faster. So all that sort of stuff obviously affects them in the wild, and it still affects them here because we've got an open air exhibit.
How far do they swim? What sort of distance do they travel?
How far? It depends on the species. Something like a great white can easily travel from here to New Zealand and back in a couple of months. Animals such as this are more localised. They would stay in a relatively small home range of, 20 kilometres kind of radius.
What's your turnover rate of death and replacement?
We virtually don't replace. We don't need to. We have a very low mortality rate. I guess the highest mortality rate would be in our starfish because people are touching them at the front of the exhibit. People can be pretty brutal, which is why we have a staff member there saying, sorry ma'am, can you please put it back in the water and please don't throw it, and you would be amazed at what people will do to starfish. It's a little bit disheartening. But we wouldn't have a mortality a week.
Okay.
So when you're talking about 25,000 fish, it's pretty good. So.
What diseases do you have to deal with?
In this situation we get white spot. We've had to, just through my own experience, we've limited things like blue tangs that are very susceptible to white spot. As soon as the season changes, every blue tang gets white spot. So you'll see that there's very few blue tangs, and they're one of the things that seem to sell out of aquarium shops pretty readily. Everybody loves a blue tang. But beware, they're one of the worst for white spot. So we basically don't keep them.
Excuse me, when you say the season changes, they tend to get this white spot. Is that the cooler temperature?
Either. So we're talking about coming from warm into cool and cool into warm. It seems to be that change.
Temperature differences.
Yeah, so sort of autumn and spring are the big times for white spot.
They don't like change.
No, they don't, do they? No.
You don't get many tanks to Hawaii, or you stick to Australian sort of.
Basically everything is Australian. Over the years, you know, I've tried to get exotics from overseas, but you can't guarantee where they've come from, you can't guarantee how they've been caught, and
I mean, there are some countries now that make the same and importers know about it. But I'm just wondering if you did get them, how would you go about, like, they could have parasites that are here in Australia, because you're taking water straight from the seaway, don't you?
taking water straight from the seaway, yes. Yeah.
So you could introduce the disease back.
Yes, we could. I guess the thing is, where we get our fish from, we wouldn't import directly. We'd have to import into somewhere like Cairns Marine aquarium fish, whereas where they would do the quarantining for us. And if there was any fish, any disease that was shown up in their 30-day quarantine. We try and do 2 weeks here, but as you'll see, our quarantine facilities are relatively small in comparison to the number of animals that we hold here. And sometimes quarantining animals can be more detrimental because you're putting them into a small environment where they're stressed out rather than putting them into a relatively naturalistic environment. So I guess that's where it comes down to just trial and error with the people that you're buying from.
My understanding of the quarantine process is only 7 days.
It possibly is. I don't know, I haven't done it, but it possibly is, yeah.
You don't see a lot of
No. And that's the risk that you run. But you know, in an exhibit like this, where you're not having small tanks where people are getting up close and going, oh yeah, that's a yellow tank from Hawaii or something. I don't think it's necessary here. You know, you're talking about a big, and it's really people, just you guys, who would actually know the difference. And you know, just me and you, and everyone goes, oh, look at the blue tank, isn't that nice? You know, look at Dory, they don't even know that it's a blue tank. So, yeah. Has anyone got any other questions? Obviously, with that quarantine issue, I don't have facilities to quarantine those big sharks. So I have to manage them in this exhibit. So if I have a bad mating event where the female gets really badly bitten up, or I had a situation where the female bit the male back again, opened up his tail, it turned out to be a big ulceration, we've got to deal with it in this exhibit. So if we have to catch an animal out of here, we have to run a net. We've got a net system we can run about 3/4 of the way up this exhibit. We have to literally herd a single animal into that netted off area. We pull the net across, and we've then got to move the net up, and we've got a big sock or a big bag. It's a big clear bag with a drawstring on one end. And we literally bring the net in so close that the animal has to swim into that sock. So then effectively we've got a shark in a bag. Yes. And then we can do whatever we want with it really. We can move it around, we can put it into a stretcher, we can lift it out with a crane, we've got crane access, put it into a big tub on the shore, we can have our vet do what he needs to do. We had one of the females and she had some pups, and 2 pups got stuck coming out, and they were dead. Their tails weren't moving, so we knew she'd been like that for a day or so. We knew we had to do something about it, otherwise she would end up dying as well. So we had to catch her, and the vet had to pull the pups out, and then we had to let her go after that. So it all went well, but you know, it's a relatively staff-intensive event. It takes about 15 staff. A number of hours to get it done, and obviously there's always that risk that something could go wrong and the animals could bite or hit somebody with their tail or something like that. So.
Have you lost a shark?
We've lost a couple of sharks, yeah. We had a mako shark in here that we had for only a day, but the problem with makos is that they're like great whites. They need lots of water flow, they need to keep on swimming. And the animal had been caught on a line, and by the time it came in, it was pretty knackered anyway. And you know, we've lost other animals. We've lost a small dusky where the other sharks have eaten it. It was a perfectly healthy shark, and the other sharks have eaten it. It was about that size.
So you don't have problems wasted there, I guess.
waste, sorry. Usually. But we'll usually see if there's a fish that's not doing so well. It might be swimming at the surface or whatever, and we'll catch it out, take it out the back to quarantine, get it better, and put it back again. I've had one spangled emperor that I've had out the back 3 times. Put it back, it's perfectly fine, put it back, and it must just be copping some aggression from its conspecifics. Just can't cope. So he ends up stuck up in the corner there going, oh my goodness. So scoop him out again, put him out the back for a couple of weeks, feed him up again, get him perfectly fine, put him back, and the same thing continues to happen. So there's always 1 or 2 fish that you spend most of your time on, whereas the bulk of them, it's a fairly hands-off approach. Does anyone ask any other questions? What we might do is, I don't think there's 55 of you here, is there? 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. Are you guys with the Aquarium Society? Are you guys? Yeah. Okay, we've got about 35, so we might just split into 2 groups probably, if that's okay. If 2, 4, 6, 8, 10,